Welcome to Lancashire Business Stories. I'm your host, Paul Lim, and this week we're talking to Jim Cheetham Potts of Bid Factors. Now, Jim's going to talk about his journey from being a drainage engineering apprentice in Stockport to launching Bid Factors in 2018. He's going to talk about his passion for supporting small contractors, competing against the big boys, and how you can bring some of his expertise to bear in finding the right contracts and then competing in the best way that you can to win those contracts. Without further ado, let's get to it. Jim Cheetham Potts, welcome to Lancashire Business Stories.
Thank you.
So, Jim, we're going to talk about your background, how you became a business owner, how you became an expert in what you do, and as an expert, we're going to talk a little bit more about the sector that you work in to see if there's any advice that we can offer to business owners and the like who are out there doing what you do. Is that okay?
That's great.
Brilliant. So tell me how you got started, first of all, when you started out into the big wide world of business. What did you start out as? What was your first job?
So my first job, I did 9 years at local authority. I was an engineer in Stockport Council's main drainage section, and they basically put me through an apprenticeship. Sent me to college one day a week, and the rest of the time I was learning from some really knowledgeable old guys who'd been doing the job for years, going out, real hands-on stuff, dealing with the public all the time, doing lots and lots of really hands-on, pretty grotty jobs, some of them, to be fair, in drainage.
Drainage.
Well, I've crawled down some fairly tight, smelly spaces. Let's put it that way, Paul.
Is that not an analogy? Is it an analogy for business, or is it just actually?
Well, it doesn't hurt to see the sharp end of things, I think, in business. I think if you've got a good rounded awareness of as many different aspects of life as possible, the good, the bad, and the very ugly,
and smelly,
and smelly, I think it prepares you well for anything that business might throw at you as well.
So you're an engineer, getting yourself down drains and various. So
9 years doing that, and then the opportunity came along to move out of that. Onto the contracting side, so I went working for a private contractor who was organising the sort of the other side of things. They were doing the reactive maintenance, so I was sort of gamekeeper turned poacher almost, in that respect. So that was real cradle to grave stuff as well. So running various different sewer repair gangs around Greater Manchester. You were doing everything from solving the initial problem, going out, meeting the client, solving their problem, mobilising men, materials and things. And then,
so instead of you going down the drains, you were sending other people down the drains. But knowing what you're sending people into helps you manage that a lot better and more effectively and safely in that instance as well, because safety was huge, health and safety was massive. And also the financial management aspect of things there as well. The quantification of what we'd done, billing the client, agreeing, that whole process end to end. We covered that, and then from then on, I gradually moved into larger organisations, larger contracting organisations, and more forward in the business process. So away from the hands-on delivery, as far away from the drains as you could possibly get.
Further away from the drains, although quite a few of the offices were on sewage treatment work sites, so you didn't quite get away from it all that much. But moving more towards the front end, towards the the design development side of things, and that negotiation with the client, that defining the solution.
So were your clients then mainly public sector bodies, or were they private sector contractors?
So back then, I was working for private sector contractors, and our clients were the water companies.
Right. Okay. So utility companies.
Yeah, the utility companies. So we were doing work on their big annual programs.
And those would all have been done through a tender. You'd have won those. Your company would have won those through a tender
absolutely.
process.
So those would.
Were you involved in the tender process?
No, not at that stage. Not at that stage. I became involved in tendering probably about 20 years ago, when I moved to a company and got into the sort of marketing side of things. It was just posted. There was a couple of reports published in construction at that time. There was the Egan report and the Latham report, which were government commissioned reports, which were really trying to find out where construction was going wrong, what was going wrong with procurement, and why contracts weren't working out in the way that everyone was expecting them to. And they discovered two things. One was about collaboration and adopting a more collaborative approach rather than an adversarial sort of contractor and client approach. And the other one was about getting value for money during the tender process. And what that did is it then broke down and it came away from price-only tendering. Yeah. And that was when the whole idea, the concept of a quality bid was kind of born. Yeah. And then that found its way more and more into contracting, so that the bid writer's job was kind of born at that time, really, and it became a thing. And since then, it has grown and grown and grown. So I spent about 20 odd years with private contractors. Towards the back end of that, I was working for some really large national international infrastructure companies, actually. And I have to be honest, I wasn't impressed with what I saw of them.
Right.
I was seeing a lot of subcontracting, a lot of supply chain partnering, which I was seeing some amazing small companies that sit at the very heart of our economy. Yeah. And I was seeing the way in which they got the rough end of the stick, really, from the larger contractors. And I just kind of thought at the time, I'd love to be able to help these guys. Yeah. They're better than this, I'd love to be able to help some of these guys become giant killers and actually, rather than pick up the scraps from these larger companies, actually be on a level footing and be able to compete with them, within a tender environment.
And what was it that was the kicker for you going from working for somebody else to working for yourself? Was there an event, or was it a decision you made yourself? Or
it was something that evolved over a period of maybe about 4 to 5 years. So I'd got this itch to do something, but probably like a lot of people, the security of full-time employment is quite a strong, compelling argument for not taking that step into the unknown, isn't it? And what I found was gradually I was working with more and more bid writers and proposal writers, and I was seeing a big variance in the quality of the service that was coming through. Yep. I was seeing, some people purporting to be experts, and I was having to correct all their work when it had been done. So we were paying twice. We were paying for their time, and then we were also paying for my time. Yep. And usually that was quite frantic at the end of the bid. So it wasn't a comfortable experience. And then I was also experiencing the proposal writers who understood construction, who understood the environment, who understood what they were doing, and were far more organised about how they were doing things. And that took a lot of the pressure off. So I saw the good and the bad, and I realised there was definitely a gap in the market for somebody like me. And eventually I'd had a couple of really, really tough bids when I'd had resource taken away from me, which left me really, fighting for the bid. And we won them, but only just. Yeah. And that for me was a defining moment. And I just thought, right, you know what? There was an opportunity to walk away that presented itself, and I took that opportunity in both hands.
So was that a redundancy or when you say an opportunity?
There was a reorganisation at the company I was at the time, and it was a case of, well, you can either stay around and see what happens,
or put your hand up,
or put your hand up, and we'll make it worth your while to walk away, and so that was what I did. I took that opportunity. At the time, there was a complete peace that descended on me. I've got a very strong faith, as you know, Paul, and that played a huge part in that. And the support of my family as well at the same time really encouraged me then that actually this idea that's been sat in there for quite some time, it was time to put it into action.
And when you think back to that point where you went, right, this is it, I'm going to leave and I'm going to do it on my own, what was the real driver for you at that point? What was it that you wanted to get out of having your own business rather than working for somebody else?
There was a couple of things. One is I wanted to prove myself right. I wanted to prove that feeling that I'd had was right. Yeah. and also I really, really, really wanted to make a difference in my field. I wanted to get at the time there was a lot of talk. Social value was on the increase, and part of social value, as you may or may not know, is generating local economies, and doing that through local employment and local training, local skills. And whilst the larger companies are great at throwing money at it, the money that they're then getting from that is still going away from those areas, generally speaking. If we can do that by getting the local contractors directly involved, working to recirculate that local money, it's more effective.
Yeah.
It's more effective, and you can build resilient communities doing that as well. And so it's not just an economic thing that improves, but actually this whole social fabric can improve on the back of that. I've always had quite strong ethics. I've always been very community minded, and that really appealed to me. That whole idea that we can change society by simply changing some of the attitudes in it, and by changing the way we do business, and by making that business more sustainable. So that was another real key driver for me at that time as well. I was determined to make something that wasn't just making money, but was doing good as well.
Yeah, yeah. So cast your mind back to day one. You've just left the business that's been paying you a regular monthly salary, and you sit down at your desk. What's the first thing that goes through your mind?
Well, day one, I didn't sit down at a desk. Day one, I actually took about 2 weeks off because I just needed some headspace to think it all through. And so,
all right. Well, day one, when you went back to work, then.
But I think the headspace is important.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You need that thinking space. You can't just suddenly sit down at the desk and start doing stuff, because you need that thinking space. You need that time to digest it, and you need that time to phone people up and have conversations and phone people who've done it before and say.
So in that 2 weeks off, you weren't just doing nothing.
No. I wasn't doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. No, I was very much setting the stall out.
Yeah.
So that when I did sit down at the desk, I wasn't distracted by a zillion and one other things and thoughts and worries. I was actually spending 2 weeks setting out, what does this landscape look like? What does this new landscape feel like? Yeah. Mapping it out. So I had a map then that at least then I wasn't wandering and foundering in the wilderness. I had actually some means of finding my way around, and I knew what needed doing within the timescale that I would eventually have to do it in.
Yeah.
Which is a learning curve like that.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get your first client?
Not long at all. Not long at all. Literally in that first 2 weeks, I had 2 calls. Both of them saying, "Oh, we believe you're setting up on your own. Have you got any work on at the minute?" And so I was really fortunate that that I had 2 clients immediately that gave me work. One in particular guaranteed me about 12 weeks worth of work straight away, and that was working with somebody that I'd worked with before within one of the businesses that I'd worked in. They'd moved on. They were high up in another business, and they basically said, "Brilliant, you're free. Come over." There wasn't much discussion about it. It was like, "Right, we need you.
Yeah.
Give us your price. You come in," sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was that point I realised actually I'd been thinking about pricing points and structures before that, but actually that was the realisation at that point that I realised that you set your own worth then. And if you know what you're worth, that's a really important driving part of business, to know your worth and not undersell yourself. Because what I could have done, I suppose, at that time would be offer my services out on a real discounted basis to try and generate the income. But I wasn't going to do that.
I think it's one of the things that I often talk to our clients and other people in the wider business community about, and that's how do you value yourself and the services that you provide in terms on the return on investment that whoever you're working with can get from them. Because a lot of people go on an hourly rate, and an hourly rate is probably the worst thing you can do in a lot of situations, because it penalises people who get better and quicker at doing things. If you can do a fantastic job for somebody in 5 hours, and you charge them an hourly rate, and then you get even better at doing it and speed things up and invest in technology and do all the things you can do, and all of a sudden you can do that same thing in 2.5 hours, then basically they're going to pay you less to do the same or an even better job. So hourly rates are definitely a no-no. But then it's about the value that you bring to the organisation. You know, a lot of people would say, oh, I can't afford that for a bid writer. But then you think about, well, how much would this contract be worth to you if you won it in terms of pure profit? And it runs into the hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds for a lot of larger organisations. So the fact that you can save them that amount of money or make that amount of money for them or help them to make that amount of money makes what you would charge almost ridiculously small, and you should be charging more for it. Yeah. So for me, you know, it's always about what's the value that you are bringing to the organisation rather than how much are you charging for it, because that puts a completely different picture onto it.
Yeah.
So knowing your value is really important. So when you first started off as your own, what were the main things that you were looking for out of business? Now, obviously, a sense of fulfillment that you've already talked about in terms of helping people. You know, different business owners go into business to achieve different things. You know, some people want to build an empire. Some people want to build a business that's got, you know, an asset value and they've got a number in mind. They want to build and sell. Other people have more of what I'd class as a lifestyle business. What was it for you, and what were your main drivers? What did you want out? You know, if you had to look at it and say, yes, this has been a success, what would determine whether it's been a success or not for you?
So for me, I suppose there's a couple of drivers. One is that freedom to think in my own space and to be my own boss, to set the timescales as much as I can myself, and to be able to have that flexibility to do things that I couldn't do before when I was in employment. Yeah. Not long after I started up business, it's an interesting story. It kind of proves the point. I was at my mum and dad's with my wife, and we were just chatting, and the phone rang, and it was a friend of mine. And he said, "Oh, do you fancy coming down to the RAF Museum at Duxford this week?" He said, "There's a load of Dakotas taking off to go and fly across the Channel. It'll be something to see once in a lifetime. Yeah. Do you fancy doing that?" And I was like, "Oh," I said, "Yeah, that sounds great, Pete." But I said, "But I've got a couple of things on this week, and it could be quite busy. So I'll have a think about it." And I put the phone down, and my wife turned to me and gave me a right funny look, and she said, "Who was that?" And I told her. She said, "Well, you're the boss." She said, "Tell me again why you went into business." And I said, "Well, it was so I could make time to do things that I wanted to do." She said, "Why don't you start?" So I rang him back, and I accepted, and I rearranged the workload that week. Yeah. And nothing bad happened. In fact, I actually recall that the bid I was working on, we won. So it was all fine. I just rearranged the time so I could go and do the things I really wanted to do. So I suppose that was one of the things I really enjoyed is that freedom to just simply call my own agenda, and flex the time that I need to commit around that. Yeah. And the other thing I get a real kick out of is being behind the scenes. I've always been a bit behind the scenes person. I'm never, generally speaking, I don't like the limelight. I'll stand up in front of a crowd of people if I'm made to or if I have to. But I generally like doing all the behind the scenes stuff that makes things happen and being able to sit there and think, yeah, this is good, this is great. Knowing the little secrets that no one else sees. And that's very much part of bid writing, is you get that fulfillment from knowing that actually, if you hadn't have brought all these jigsaw pieces together, the picture wouldn't have formed, and the viewers wouldn't have got the pleasure out of it. Similar sort of thing, to winning a bid that that contract would never have been won, and all those people whose jobs depend on it wouldn't have something to move on to. So I really, really enjoy that side of things, and that fulfillment that brings as well. In addition to being able to participate in the good stuff and play an active role in society as well. Yeah. And business, having my own business, gives me the freedom to do all of that.
Yeah. As long as you can get enough business.
As long as you can get them enough business.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, there must be a level of income as well. I don't know what you don't need to say what it is, but there must be a level of income there that you need. So
Yeah, and
being in business is about making money at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Whatever business you're in, it's about making profit. So it's either so you can have the lifestyle that you want, or so you can grow a business and a business asset. So you still need to bring business in to do that. So I'm sure you've got your own aspirations and goals and bucket lists in terms of how what you want to do and how much money you need to do that.
Yeah, and the way I did that, I suppose from a starting point, and I think other people might find this useful if they're going into business, especially if they're coming out of full-time employment into business, is I looked at the income that I had at that point in time, and what I needed to live off, and I set that as the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
Even though in employment I was doing quite well. But I set that as the bare minimum because I thought, well, I'll have other expenses. There'll be other things to pay for. I need to factor all that in. It's not just about my income, but it's all about pension. It's all about, the incidentals of running a business. It's about, insurances. Insurance is expensive for business, depending on what you're doing. I mean, I have to carry indemnity insurance now. If I make a bad decision or advise someone badly.
Yeah, we have it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that costs extra money. And those are the things you don't see necessarily when you're going into business. Training yourself, keeping on developing yourself, all those things that your employer would normally just throw at you. You've now got to think about how you're going to make those happen because you've got to keep developing. You've got to keep moving forward. You can't stand still because the minute you stand still, your competition will overtake you.
Yeah. I often say to people, businesses are like trees. You're either growing or dying. There's absolutely no standing still because if you're plateauing, your competitors are overtaking you.
Yeah.
And technology's overtaking you, and your overheads are overtaking you. So there's no such thing as standing still in business, and you've got to keep driving forwards.
Yeah.
So how long ago was it that you started Bid Factors?
2018.
2018.
Yeah. It was March 2018 when I started out. So we're nearly
So you're
8 years old.
Almost 8
this
years old.
March, yeah. Wow.
Brilliant. So what's been the biggest challenge for you, would you say, over that 8 years?
Without a shadow of a doubt, actually running a business. That's been the biggest challenge.
Tell me more about that.
Well, when I set out, I knew I was good at what I did.
Yeah.
And the business in my eyes at that point in time was what I did.
Yeah.
What people don't tell you is actually there's that bit of the business that actually, is the focus, but there's a whole load of other things around it that keep that moving forward. And if you don't do any of the other things and you don't do them well, then actually you might as well go and do something else because what you do won't carry on working without all the other bits that make the business.
There's a difference between being a brilliant bid writer and being a brilliant business owner of a bid writing business.
Absolutely.
Two very different skill sets.
Yeah.
With some transferable skills, but still two very different skill sets.
Yeah. 100%.
So what would you say in terms of being a business owner and running the business has been the biggest challenge for you?
Probably keeping the business coming in on a regular, stable basis.
So marketing and
marketing, sales, definitely. And I suppose that's taken a bit of me having to pivot and reinvent myself to a certain extent. Looking at what I do and framing that in different ways, and then saying, well, what is time critical, and what are the activities that happen within a time restricted bid period, which is 90% of the time. Those are the times I'm working in because bids come out and they have to go in. There's a deadline at either end. Yeah. What has to be done in that timescale, but what can we actually take out of that and help businesses to do before that even happens? So those aspects, then the preparation, the knowledge management become the thing that actually isn't time critical. And so how do we package those up and sell those to the client? Yeah. Because and how then do we convince them actually there's value in doing that now rather than when the bid documents land?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as a business owner of a bid writing business, you've got to balance your time as well because the actual process of writing
and doing the work around, helping somebody with a tender is quite time intensive, I should imagine. Whereas marketing and sales is also quite time intensive, and you've got to balance the two because you can't have one without the other.
No, that's right.
In any business, it's one of those where I often say, clients that we're talking to, and it goes back to being an expert bid writer and not necessarily an expert business owner of a bid writing business. They have this Kevin Costner field of dreams. If I build it, they will come kind of philosophy. Where they'll build a website and they think that everything's just going to work. And for most business owners like you, when they start out, they'll have a honeymoon period as well, where they're either well known in their sector and well known in their industry, or they might get one or two of the clients from former jobs that they've had who come over and do some work with them. But then over a relatively short period of time, they'll realise that there's only a limited number of those clients that they already know that are going to give them work. They've got to actually go out and find it. So marketing and sales are absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
If you're going to build and have a successful business.
Well, also there's another little aspect to that, I suppose, that worth touching on, is that what I do, and I always describe myself as either a bit of a Nanny McPhee or a Mary Poppins, because it's very much about, you'll go in, there'll be somebody that needs your help, really badly needs your help, so you'll give them that help, and as you give them more help, you'll educate them on the way, and the level of their competence will increase, and you'll give them confidence as well, because they'll start to win bids, and from that, then they'll start to listen to you more, and they'll learn more, and then you sort of reach this sweet spot where you're really successful, and then they sort of go out on their own a little bit and start to do it themselves, and I then step back and become less hands-on. And more of a critical friend. So you almost your business is about developing someone else's business to the extent where they don't need you anymore. Exactly. And so that new business funneling is definitely the whole marketing and that side of things definitely really important, because you have to be able to see beyond the success that you're having at the moment. And that's not to say the clients don't come back, because they do. I've got clients that have been with me since 2018, and they still will pick up the phone. We've got this in, we've got that in, and they'll send it to me, and we'll just elevate it that bit further each time, because we're dealing with better and better basic standards each time.
Let's talk a little bit about the business, Bid Factors. What are the actual services that you provide with Bid Factors?
So the actual services we provide, they range basically. So we act as a guide to help people through the bidding process. Then we also help people to manage the different aspects that form part of that process as well. So we help them with things like capturing knowledge that's held within their organisation, because a lot of people don't do that naturally. And creating libraries and banks of information that they can then draw on at a moment's notice when they need it. And that's very much, I suppose, a risk management and opportunity management sort of activity. The other thing we help them with is actually navigating the process, because if they're new to bidding, it's quite a daunting environment to go into. So it helps to have an educated friend, somebody who knows the way, who can guide them through, and who can maybe demystify some of the stuff, because when you're faced with all these formal legal documents, it can be really, really scary at first. And there's a tendency to either assume that they're all correct, which very often they aren't, or to not ask questions, or to find it all, or to not provide the right level of information. And so what we help people to do is very quickly navigate through that, find the right level, and get a confidence then that enables them to bid effectively quicker. So they may still lose the first couple they try, but actually the third one they'll probably get, because they'll have learnt a lot quicker. So that's the other thing we do. The third thing we do is we help them to write about their story.
When you say you help them to write, do you help them to write, or do you write?
Well, we can do both. We can do both. There's various different ways of doing it. And it depends on the organisation that I'm working with. At the very, suppose, at the extreme levels, sometimes I'll work with organisations who have no idea where to start. And so what I do is I break down the requirements of the bid for them. I'll then write them prompts for them to give me the information quite quickly in really, really basic forms. Yeah. And then I'll use that information to then create the story that then is a really nice polished thing that we then submit. Yeah. At the other end of the spectrum, I deal with some quite experienced clients who can do all that in-house. Yeah. And when they come to me, what they want me to do is rip it apart, critique it. Right. What's wrong with this? Poke the holes in it, and then we build an already good bid into an absolutely fantastic.
So you're either a guide by the side and an educator. You are somebody to critique what they're already doing, or you can get more involved and be more hands-on.
Absolutely, yeah. I can lead or support, and it's bespoke to every single client. That we don't do a one-size-fits-all, and because there isn't a one-size-fits-all in bidding. We don't do generic, we do bespoke.
Yeah. And are there particular sectors that you tend to focus on for people that you work with? So I know your background's construction and sort of utilities, if you will.
Yeah. Yes and no. So yes, I've got a core knowledge in construction, utilities, design, infrastructure, all those things. But also now I'm starting to diversify. I do quite a lot of work for the CIC and charity sector, voluntary sector, because the principles of bidding, whether you're bidding for IT services or child support services or sewer services, utilities, it doesn't matter what sector you're in. The principles are exactly the same, right? Because it's all about putting yourself in the end customer or the end user's shoes and saying, well, why are they asking these questions? Yeah. The answers, the technical side of the answers will be very different depending on your sector. Yeah. But the questions that you're asking are exactly the same. Yeah. And it's very much like being a child and asking why all the time, and getting all the information together from those questions.
Yeah, no, I get that. And responding to tenders is a challenging task. It's not easy for somebody who's never responded. As I know, because I've been through that process myself. We won in a previous existence, we won a central government framework worth 7 figures to the business. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. And we had somebody to critique ours at the time. And the first section that I sent off came back with so many. It was in the days where we actually got it back with red marks on it. Big question marks and stuff on it. By the time we sent the 7th and final section off, there was hardly any because we learned as we were going along with it, which was brilliant. So for somebody who's maybe thinking about public sector tenders, who maybe hasn't done one because they think it's too much hassle, what's the best starting? Where do you find them, first of all? Where do you find public sector tenders?
So in the UK now, there's one single place that all public sector tenders must be advertised on, and that's called Find a Tender. It's a government-run platform. Yeah. It's free to subscribe to. It's free to register for, and you can go on and register. There's lots of different tools on that. For instance, you can lodge information on it that you can use again and again and again. Right. Okay. But also, you can subscribe to a regular daily notification service, and you can funnel that down. And you can really refine that down by what we call different product codes and service codes.
So you can filter it into.
So you can filter it into what you're looking for. Because obviously, if you didn't do that, you would literally get an email with thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities every day. And you would never. That wouldn't be practical.
And there are different types of contracts and tender relationships, aren't there? So there are things. There's like sole supplier contracts. There might be a framework agreement. Yeah. And I've heard of people who've gone, oh, we've won this public sector contract, and you say, how much business are you going to get from it? And actually, they're on a framework that's got 30 other suppliers on. So that's just the beginning. Of getting on the framework is just the very beginning of it, because then you've got to try and make sure that you market yourself in such a way that you're getting in front of those people who have access to that agreement. Yeah. Yeah. So can you give us a breakdown of the different types of tenders that you could have?
So yeah, absolutely. And you've just covered a couple of them. So there's different types of frameworks. So you'll have strict frameworks, which generally tend to be fewer providers on it. So for instance, Most of the frameworks that I've bid in the last year, they will be looking to appoint maybe between 2 and 4 suppliers on each particular lot or each particular discipline. But then you've got things called dynamic purchasing systems, which central government use a lot, government agencies use a lot, Network Rail and Environment Agency. And these are centrally, they're almost like a vetting system. And you submit your information, it gets evaluated, and through that you stand a chance of getting accepted onto the system. And those are the sort of systems where you'd maybe have 30 plus suppliers on there. But then what that does then, it makes you visible to these public sector organisations who may then want stuff procuring on an ad hoc basis. Yeah. The other route then is usually for larger contracts, is they'll advertise them as a bespoke contract or a bespoke project. So, for instance, a lot local authorities will advertise, say if they need a bridge building or a road junction altering, they'll advertise that as a specific project. And generally what they'll do, there's two routes to that. One is they'll advertise it as an open process, in which case anybody can apply for it, and the local authority then has to sift through different levels of selection questionnaire till they narrow down the final list of people that then they evaluate. Or they can do it as 2 stages, so they can have a pre-qualification stage whereby you submit it, and then they evaluate that, and then they invite maybe five companies to tender then from that. And so there's those sorts of contracts as well.
I suppose there is some from a pure scale and size perspective that some companies just wouldn't be able to handle, from a financial perspective, from a number of people perspective. So you need to make sure as a public authority that you're getting the right candidates in the first place, because if they go, we'll look at them, and there's no way on God's earth that they could actually do that, then what would be the point?
Yeah, which is why they have that selection process to wheedle out the non-compliant ones. And I think that's one of the things that's worth talking about actually, is if you're going to be bidding, make sure you're compliant. I've come across quite a few companies in my time who bravely soldier on when they should actually be down just walking away, because there's certain basic things they don't comply with, and their attitude's been, we'll be all right, we'll be fine, they'll see beyond that, and they'll see what an offer we've got, and they'll
say yes and then deal with it later.
And the plain fact is that you may then then put an awful lot of work into a bid that's not going to go anywhere. And you've got to remember, bids cost money. So be careful about how you bid as well. And again, I don't subscribe to the school of thought of some companies who bid everything that lands on the desk because
it's selective.
Exactly.
And although it doesn't cost you, you don't have to pay to submit a bid. You actually pay in terms of the amount of time and resource and everything else that you put into submitting a bid.
Oh yeah, and
some of the bigger companies, if you look at the tier 1 contractors, they've got bid teams with 20, 30, 40 people in.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who worked for one of the big construction companies who was a tender manager with a team of 10 or 12 people, and they were bidding on, 50 to 100 to 150 million pound contracts. So you need a team of people if you're going to win those kind of contracts. So it can be a huge amount of money.
Absolutely, and sometimes I'll go in and form part of that team. Even now, I have companies that will call on me to go in and do that when their resource gets stretched. The one thing I will say is, and to encourage smaller companies, is don't imagine that bigger is better.
Well, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because if you have got a smaller company, and I've got an example of this, when we bid for that central government framework agreement, we were in, there were about 10 or 15 different companies in that pool of companies. It's a niche marketplace, a relatively small number of companies. There was one standout company in the field in terms of market leaders in the UK who were probably 15 times the size in terms of revenue terms that we were. And a lot of other people would have been put off going, that company's going to go for it, we're not going to bother because there's no chance of us winning it. So what would you say to those companies who have that sort of mindset around that bidding process?
I would say you're better than you think. Yeah. That's what I would say. And I've got a couple of clients who are case in point where I've helped them to win work, and they have knocked substantially sized UK companies off the top spot. And we are talking about companies that are 100 times bigger than they are in terms of turnover. Large companies get complacent and they think they know it all, and that's an Achilles heel.
Yeah.
The key to seriously good bidding, the key to winning, is starting early and organise your knowledge. You know, the knowledge that's held by the people in your organisation is absolute gold, and that's the one thing you need to harness more than anything else. And there's two aspects to that. One is, if you could harness that information, then and you've got it in a bank that you can use, you don't then have to go and ask somebody when you do need it. And that sounds simple, but if that person is off sick or on holiday or just not available or just simply maybe having a bad day and not inclined to give it you, might be busy, then that manages a huge risk if you've already got that knowledge. And then the other flip side is, and the interesting aspect I've seen to my work certainly, is when you go and take an interest in what people are doing and take an interest in who they are and how they've got where they are, they feel really well valued, and the effort that they will put in on your behalf to market and be an ambassador for your company, you can't bottle that and buy it. And I've seen this so many times with the companies that I work with. The mood almost transforms. Where there may have been rocky morale before, the morale is absolutely rock solid and powerful overnight almost.
I suppose in some other instances as well, there is a directive in some organisations to support smaller businesses now as well. So they may be more inclined. There might be a bigger weighting in terms of supporting smaller businesses as well. I mean, it's a few years since we did that particular tender response, and we won it. We were relatively small company compared to the competitor in the market leader, and we won it. And it was worth seven figures over 2 or 3 years to us, and we were a sole supplier on that, and it gave us the opportunity to talk to other government departments as well as the one that we actually won the contract with.
Yeah.
So it's a major win. One of the other things that people often ask me about is, well, if there's this contract that we want to go for, and we know that we can fulfil the capabilities for like 50, 60% of this contract, but there's a specialist area that we don't do in-house, can we join together with somebody else to do it? What's your thoughts around, would you call them a consortium? How do you do
Absolutely.
it? How do you do it? What would you do in that case?
Absolutely. There's a huge strength in having those sorts of relationships with
Yeah.
other organisations in a similar sector to the one you're operating, and even with your competitors.
Yeah.
I've actually, when I go back to the days of when I was in employment, I've helped bid probably 10 to 15 joint ventures and alliances, most of which were companies who had joined forces with direct competitors to bid for projects.
Right.
And I've also worked with companies who had joined forces in order that they could use their relative strengths in different disciplines to provide that whole joined-up service. And the procurement procedures and the documents you fill in and the selection questionnaires allow for that as well. They allow you to put your case, because at the end of the day, the people procuring those services, they want the best service, and if that means they get it from two entities acting as one, provided you've got your arrangements and the relationship crystallised.
I think that's the key to it, isn't it? Whether it's a relatively informal relationship or a formal joint partnership, joint venture company, you need to be absolutely 100% crystal clear on what the agreements are within that relationship and the processes. Because if there's any ambiguity in it, then it can be disastrous for either player or for the person who's contracted your services.
Yeah, who's taking the lead?
Yeah.
Whose systems are you going to operate under? Because everyone's got 9001 now, but people have different systems. So you need to get those little basic things cleared up before you even think about bidding. So the most successful joint ventures I've seen have been the ones that have got together and got their ducks in a row before the documents are even out. So that when the documents are out, they can really effectively bid them, and their teams know each other as well, because that's the other thing. Especially if you've got competitors, because there's nothing worse than two competing teams keeping things to themselves, thinking they're doing their parent company a favour, where in actual fact they're not doing anybody any favours at all.
No, I get that. For those out there who are looking at tenders then, and maybe are responding to tenders, what would be your top 3 sort of tips, apart from obviously picking up the phone and talking to you?
So top 3 tips are, firstly, I would say, go and get your feet wet. Go and look for those sorts of bids using those portals. It's free to register. It doesn't cost you anything to register to get the documents. So go on a few of them, download the documents. You can then opt out, and you won't be penalised for that, because these portals are set up to attract people to bid. So if they started to strike people off because of, that they'd had a few too many documents, they'd end up with nobody bidding anything, because there wouldn't be they'd simply strike everybody in the country off. So get in there, download some documents, have a look through them before you even think about bidding. Have a look through them and see what the requirements are. What sort of levels of compliance they're looking for? Do you have those systems in place to provide those levels of compliance? And if you don't, then if you're going to seriously move into it, you need to consider what you need to put in place as a very minimum to make sure that you're compliant. So that's number one, is read documents, learn and improve. The second thing I'd say is, once you've done that and you've started to get your knowledge in place, and you've maybe started to understand what it's all about, is write some basic responses and then submit them. Go for a bid that and maybe choose something that's not business critical, but would be something you'd quite like. Because if you get it, you're going to have to deliver it. That's the worst case scenario. But the best case scenario is actually you don't quite make it. What will happen is you're entitled to feedback, and that feedback is relative. So basically, the contracting organisation, the procurement organisation, in public sector terms at least, is obliged to tell you your scores and the feedback relative to the winning bidder. So you don't only get the feedback on your bid, but you actually get told what the winning bidder did. And so you've then got a benchmark to work from and a target to aim at. So they're the two things. And then the third thing is, have fun doing it. If it's a chore, if it's ripping your business apart, stop doing it, and go and find someone who can help you. Because it may not be that bidding's not for you. It might just be that you're going about it all wrong. So don't be afraid to ask for some guidance.
I know we had a lot of learnings when we did that first one many years ago. Not this business, another business, because we just didn't have any of the documentation. We had to write everything. We had some certificates and that kind of stuff, but we had to gather it all together. It took so long. There were a lot of late nights because we just didn't have any kind of system for it. So, gathering that data together and practicing on a couple of non-critical ones is a really useful sort of...
But you'll develop that bank very quickly, and it does become easier. It does become easier. But the other thing I would say is, you may have that information in place. But I'm thinking of a particular client of mine. They'd lost 20% of their business, but they'd lost it not through not having the right information, but simply not through not communicating it properly, not answering a question in the right order. Simple things like that can destroy it. So it's about really understanding how to hone it.
Answering the actual question that's been asked rather than what you think they want.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just to finish off then, a couple of quick fire questions coming back to you as a business owner.
Okay.
If there was one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self who was about to go into business, what would it be?
Get a good accountant.
That's brilliant advice. And describe a good accountant.
So a good accountant will guide you through the various different aspects of running a business, from VAT, limited, registration, all those things, all the way through to, margins and operating profit and, working capital and things like that. They'll help explain the terms, but they'll also help, if they're accountants worth of salt, they'll understand how businesses run and what the key essentials are to have in place. They'll be able to advise you on payroll, tax, all these sorts of things.
And are there any resources that you've used that have helped you in terms of books or videos or people that you'd refer people to in terms of helping you with your business?
Action Coach has definitely helped me, but also
I didn't pay him to say that.
It's been good to have somebody to hold me to account, and that's definitely well worth doing. And the other thing I would say is networking as well. Get a good network around you, because you'll find that there will be people who have answers to questions. There'll be people who've been there, seen it and done it before, and have either failed or succeeded. Either way, there's a huge amount of learning. And you'll be surprised at the amount of generosity there is out there amongst fellow business owners.
Yeah, definitely. Jim, how do people find you?
Quite easy going, Paul. No.
I'm going to have to change that question.
Joking about. No. People want to find me. I've got a website, which is www.bidfactors.co.uk.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn, both personally and the company's on LinkedIn.
As Jim Cheetham-Potts?
No, Jim Cheetham Potts.
Jim Cheetham Potts.
Yeah.
Is it all one word?
There's no
Two separate
words.
words.
There's no hyphen. There's no hyphen. But Bid Factors is also searchable on LinkedIn as well. Or they can phone me or email me. So jim@bidfactors.co.uk.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure all that information is in the show notes so people can access it. And just give us the name of that tender portal again so people can have a look at that.
It's called Find a Tender.
Find a Tender.
Find a Tender. And if they Google Find a Tender, it's the UK government tender platform.
Brilliant. Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.